right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of
Perspectives.
the podcast where BC and I literally just talk across from each other and you listen.
I don't know. I had to read Perspectives. I swear I knew that.
All right. Well, welcome back. Not going to lie, BC and I recorded this last week and we forgot to hit the record button. So this is take 2. Hopefully it's better quality than it was last time.
I think it was pretty good.
I think last time was actually great, so I'm kind of nervous that this
Actually,
one's
you
not gonna
guys
be as
missed the best conversation we've ever had.
I would say it was pretty good.
Got to the end, went to press the button, and went,
Oh, darn it.
yeah, I guess that happens. We don't have the production quality yet that, say, Joe Rogan does, but we'll get there.
Yeah, someday, you know.
So
it'll
the
happen.
topic that we were on about last week, and that we'll be on about this week, is education. Education, broadly speaking, across the United States, and a little bit in comparison from state to state and to other nations. You
Yeah,
wanna kick us
so
off?
yeah, sure. I was going to ask you to kick us off, but I can kick us off. I think education is struggling in the United States compared to where it has at previous points in our history. I'm not saying our education is bad. I think we have overall good education, and when you compare us to the globe, we're, in the top 25, quarter at least. Yeah. If not the top 10%. If you look at the top nations, if I pull up my statistics over here, the United States is 10th in science, and we are, wait, is that right? Yeah. 10th in science, 10th in reading, and 25th in math. I think that's pretty good for reading and science, and you have a different opinion on math. So let's kind of kick it off with that.
Well, first of all, I do accept, and we should all note that a growing percentage of our population are people coming to the United States from other places, and English is not their first language. So they're having to learn how to communicate here as well as the primary subject. So that is a challenge for those people. And that can potentially skew our numbers a little bit. We have to understand that across various major organizations that are ranking these kinds of things, the U.S. does rank typically in the top quartile, or was it quintile?
Quintile.
Either or, depending on the test method and organization. But I think as the leader of the free world, that's a pretty poor performance on our part. I think there was a time where if there had been a standardized testing metric that could be applied globally, there was a time in our history where we would have been number one in everything.
Is that true, though? I mean,
we can't.
Asia has always, we always make fun. I like Andrew Yang because math, right?
We have to understand that the Eastern world, in recent history, the last several centuries, was not more advanced than the United States. We kind of, between us and England, gave the world the education system that is broadly accepted and disseminated throughout the globe now.
Is that true, though? Because I think if you look back, some of the most highly educated cultures of all time were China, Japan.
I'm only talking about the last couple of centuries.
You even look at the Muslims and the Greeks were really, really super high educational.
Sure, I'm speaking post-industrial revolution. So
Okay.
Industrial revolution forward. I
Okay.
think for much of that time, the United States led the world. You could say that the UK did in its system of higher education with Cambridge and Oxford for a long time. And those remain premier organizations, and they still draw, as do our Ivy League schools, they still draw people from across the world, and the best and brightest from around the world. They come to our systems not because it is necessarily a better education, but because that education is a rubber stamp, right? That gives
Sure.
them validity.
I agree with that.
The piece of paper that they get from that institution carries weight.
Yeah, but if you look at our education system, I wouldn't say the mass majority of those are foreign folks. Like what percentage of the
About 6% of our system of higher education in the United States is taken up by foreigners, roughly. But if you contrast it to I mean, I guess we'll jump right into this, the STEM field. I'm a big believer that STEM is critical, and it's not to say that the liberal arts is not important to our society, because that's how we get thought, right? And how we move society forward in a social way, but in terms of economics, in terms of productivity, in terms of invention, and the United States is responsible for much of the modern inventions that we take for granted in
but that's
the modern world.
That's kind of my point about the mathematics thing, though, is right? Let's say you have Asian countries that are far higher than us, because I mean, there's a lot of numbers, right? I think Singapore's first, Taiwan is second, Japan third, followed by Korea. And when you look at the PISA scores, by the way, PISA is for 15-year-olds, right? So I just want to make sure that's not like necessarily higher education scores, although I would say 15 probably translates into college at some point.
That's that transitional. Educators, I guess, academics have decided that is a critical age.
Formative age.
It's not only formative, but it's an indicative age, right? That's an age by which we can look at people and kind of see the trajectory of where they're headed, at least in terms of education.
So back to my point is, while those countries might be ahead in math scores, they're not necessarily ahead in innovation. There's a lot of different fields where I think the fact that United States are pretty good at reading and pretty good at science, those things in combination with our culture around innovation and trying new things and failing fast really kind of leads to that culture of growth and
culture is a separate issue, and I believe we have the best culture on the planet for incentivizing invention and inventiveness and problem solving and excellence, right? And I think that draws people.
Sure, yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
That brain drain that we've been engaging in for decades now, attracting the best and brightest from other countries and bringing them here, is because we have that culture of success.
Well, it's not just the culture of success, right? Because I like to look at World War I and World War II, where we had like Wernher von Braun and Einstein and all the greats that were coming from all parts of the world to the United States. And I even look farther back than that, where if you look at World War I, the United States was so much farther ahead because we had mixed in cultures. So if you think about like American steel was so much better than the rest of the world is because you had Japanese steelmakers and German steelmakers. So
we benefit from the best and brightest, and that's what brain drain is. Right?
Yeah.
But the reason why is because our society, our culture allows for that. It encourages that in a way that no other society does to quite the same extent. Not since 1776, right? There's a reason why we have the highest attempted immigration rates in the world. And that's been that way for a long time, a long, long time. But back to the education thing and why those numbers, why I think they matter, is yes, we have the lion's share of the innovation in the STEM field, globally speaking, in the last 100 years. The United States is a... That's what was Lion King? Was it Mufasa?
Yeah,
Mufasa the king. We're Mufasa, right? And
Mufasa dies, right?
Well, we're Mufasa while he's still alive.
Okay.
But we're Mufasa, and Asia is kind of like Simba, but Simba's on the rise.
Yeah, absolutely, sure.
And they've been able to take
Mufasa
and learn.
Sorry.
And many of the Asian countries, is not unique to China. Many of the Asian countries, but specifically China and India, have been sending people to the United States to learn our system of things and bringing it back to their countries, and that has rapidly brought them up. Now, why is it a problem in my mind that education is where it is and our placement should be higher? Well, if you look at STEM jobs in America, foreigners account for over a quarter of it.
Sure.
And it's like 26%. And more importantly, the really high-end jobs, the Silicon Valley jobs, right? Foreigners are accounting for like 2/3. right? And they're only 6% of our education system, 6% of our college students or less. It fluctuates from year to year, right? Depending on
state to state, institution to institution. Yeah.
It depends on policy, right? Which administration is in. Some are friendlier to foreign students, some not so much. But we won't get into that. But
I think the bigger
it's
conversation,
a small amount is the point. It's a small amount in our college system. But once we get into the higher paying, the really high paying tech jobs, foreigners take the lion's share of that. And I'm not saying they're taking it from Americans. I'm saying they're being more competitive than us. And yes, that innovation is happening here, right? It's those guys and gals are inventing all of those things, making those discoveries, pushing those boundaries here in the U.S., but it's not Americans driving much of that innovation anymore. Those are foreigners. And so my concern is that Americans need to be back in that seat where the bulk majority of that innovation is being done by Americans.
I mean, I agree with that. I think the more staggering number, rather than where we currently sit, is the decline of our math scores over time and the decline of us from those higher positions over time. It shows that our scholastic system is suffering. And when you look at policy, because it always comes down to policy, and you know me, I'm not very political on either side, but policy does matter and it does impact people. One of the things I say in business is, you define bad metrics and you get bad behavior. You define really good metrics and you get really good behavior. And I think when you had like the No Child Left Behind policies, and when you stop focusing on the people that were at the top of your classes and you started focusing on everybody else, you got a normalization for sure. So you brought some of those lower folks up and you were focusing on test scores, but test scores don't necessarily guarantee good outcomes, number one. And number two, you're no longer focusing on your smartest, your brightest, your most capable people. And it used to be, whether for good or for bad, there's pros and cons to all of these things. You stopped focusing on the top level students that we had in those classes. Now, the other thing that we did, which is policy, is that we changed the curriculum radically away from, math, science, arithmetic,
logic, reason.
Math, arithmetic, same thing. Reading, writing, all those things kind of are de-escalated. And we also find that lack of physical education has a direct impact on people's ability to focus and to, apply themselves.
Yep.
So we're removing all these things and we're shrinking these topics. And a lot of that is because policy is saying that schools, and I have a lot of friends that are, in the school system, where you have to do these 30 other things. Now, I'm not saying those 30 other things are bad, right? Some of them are, you help your kids psychologically deal with stress, or, we do have a rise in social media and a rise, we've talked about this before, suicide rates in America. Those are things that are probably healthy for schools to talk to kids about. But when you jam 50 things into the schedule that you don't have time for, all the things that are important topics for radical success in school fall off. And so as a parent with, 3 boys, I find that there's a lot smaller focus on the really critical classes and more focus on all the other things that I don't even think should be in school personally. I think you really should be focusing on the primary topics that prepare the kids for long-term success. And to be fair, that's not just reading, writing, and arithmetic and science. To me, the biggest thing is skills, right? Is things that teach kids how to learn. And that's scheduling, that's making sure that you're time-oriented. I'll give you an example of this. This drives me absolutely bonkers. My children, all 3 of them, when they got to elementary school, right, out of kindergarten into first grade, 0 homework. And then they had 0 homework all the way through 5th grade. And then they had 0 homework all the way through 8th grade. And I'm sitting here going, okay, high school and colleges and work, like the real world, is all based on these patterns of behavior that make you successful. And those patterns of behavior, when I was in school, the teacher taught us how to take notes. The teacher taught us how to do research. The teachers taught us how to
ask questions.
They taught us how to learn. And then we had these schedules, and the schedules were be on time to these things. There were consequences. Things had to be turned in. you eliminate all those things, and it's not just the homework. Like the grades to me don't matter. What matters to me is the patterns of behavior. And when you remove all of those things, all of a sudden, all of my kids struggled.
You remove discipline.
That's right.
Yeah. A note on that: Canada and the UK 190-day school years, Australia 200 days, Taiwan and Japan 220 to 250, depending on whether it's private or public. Our school year is about 180 in the US. And so you've got a shorter school year than a lot of these other countries that are testing higher than us and who are sending people here and taking a disproportionate amount of our better paying jobs.
Yeah.
I think there's a correlation there. I don't think that being math alone or being good at reading alone is enough to make somebody successful, right? But if you have a student who's used to going to school more days out of the year, used to a longer school day, Taiwan, Japan, especially Taiwan, gnarly long days. If you're used to the discipline required to do the thing that you don't like to do and don't want to do ever, but you have to do it all the time, that prepares you for a challenging adult life, which is what everybody faces when they hit that age, right? When they finally move out of their parents' house.
Yeah.
For some of us in America, and that might be 18, it might be 36. We all know somebody.
Oh, dude, that
might be 40.
I had a friend of mine, and he has had a bunch of kids. Has a bunch of kids, and
I'm so glad you corrected that.
I would say that all of them failed to launch. All of them, not one or two, but all of them are sitting in their 30s, still living at home with mom and dad, and they have low-paying jobs, and they have, they struggle in terms of applying themselves, and a lot of that I think was enablement by the parents to stay at home and not worry about it, and not be disciplined, and play video games and watch TV and watch movies and constantly the lack of discipline over a long period of time. And, now that they're getting into their late 30s, a couple of them have moved out. And I mean a couple of them, not like all of them, but just like 2 out of the 6 have moved out. And it's just mind boggling to me. And the 6, by the way, none of them drive. Right. So they don't drive.
Stop.
I just feel like that is that we were talking about culture, where there's some things about our culture that are very, very good. I think there are some things about our culture where in America, we're also enablers. We enable people to not do work. We enable people to not have to go to school. We enable people to, stay at home and watch TV. We enable people, like there's this big problem with enabling bad behavior. And back to the metrics thing,
it's a freedom culture, right? We also enable someone to build a Fortune 500 or 100 company.
Sure. Yeah, right? Absolutely.
There's a reason why most big successful corporations are built out of and based out of the U.S.
There's why a lot of billionaires who build successful countries, even in other countries, come to the U.S.
Yeah. Now, it's got to be said that college, just going to college and even graduating college in and of itself is not an indicator that you're going to be successful in life, right? We have to say that as well.
In fact, it's becoming the opposite reason. So it used to be where college was a luxury item, right? And if college was a luxury item, if you had college, it made you more valuable than the next person.
Yeah, it was a status symbol.
That's right.
And now it's becoming
ubiquitous.
Yeah, perfectly. Yeah. I remember a time where having a bachelor's degree was like a foot in almost any door, right? And a master's like, oh man, we got to hire this guy.
Well,
now there are places that won't look at you unless you've got a couple of bachelors and maybe a master's, right? And even if you do, you're still swimming in a pool. Now, it's no longer a local talent pool. You're not competing against 200 other guys or gals in your town. You're competing globally. You're competing against people who are willing to move here from India.
Yeah. I went to school specifically because in the middle of the 90s, my dad had an opportunity to become a CTO, and he got turned down specifically because the other guy had a college degree. It was a big deal. And so I went to school for a college degree. And now there's people that have, a master's and a doctorate, and you're hiring them. And I can honestly say, in my industry, I have almost never seen somebody with a master's or a doctorate be a better engineer than somebody with just a bachelor's, right? And in some cases, I know a couple folks, a good friend of mine from New Zealand, man, he was a rock star, total rock star, zero college. And so, you know, you got to be really careful as an employer these days. And I think that we're starting to see the pendulum swing the other way, which is because everybody has a degree, it's almost becoming in some cases where businesses almost don't even care about them anymore because you're just assuming everybody has it.
Which brings us to the question, why then why does education matter? If we're moving into this world where education is not an indicator of great life success, and it's become something that's so common, right? There was a time where very few people owned automobiles, and now
everybody does.
Yeah, there are like multiple automobiles per person in some places.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, why is education still important?
I think education is still important. Let's just be clear in terms of differentiating the capacity to learn and the skills to continuously learn. I think the people at the top of their field, especially in my field, they're constantly pushing the boundary of learning new things. I think that is separate from degrees.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I also think that there is a resurgence of trade skills. I think when you think about all the data centers that are being built, I'm seeing electricians and plumbers and HVAC folk and builders where their possible incomes are going skyrocket right now. So there's a lot of opportunity. And the thing I tell my kids all the time, right, is don't pick your career based on you going to school. Pick your career based on what you think you'll enjoy doing in life and the things that you think you'll be able to make a living out of.
And then get really good at it.
And then just get really good at it, yeah. There's a great book by Cal Newport that's called So Good They Can't Ignore You. Fantastic book. It talks about how there's a lot of people, it's the same concept behind dirty jobs, right? Which is you have a whole bunch of people that found something that nobody else wanted to do, and they just got so really good at it, and nobody else is doing it, that they make a ton of money at it. It's the same thing. And so Cal Newport did this research on a whole bunch of people that went after their passions and were very unsuccessful, and then all these other people that went after just what they were really good at. And becoming really good at something means that people are willing to pay more for your time. People are willing to give you more flexibility in vacation or scheduling. People are willing to give you more freedom in the choices that you make on the job and how you derive business decisions in the organization.
And they show you more respect.
So a lot of people want this mythological, this is my passion, this is my dream, this is all the benefits that I get when I get there. But what they don't realize is that could literally be applied to anything. And if you're super, super good at something, they come with all those benefits generally anyways. I think that school is important, but being really, really good at something is more important.
Can somebody who is good at school be really, really good at something else?
Oh, of course. Yeah, for sure. I think the ability to learn is unilateral, right? It allows you to move very easily. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go to school to be really good at learning. I think we're in a very unique position in this decade, in this century, which is there at no other point in human time have you been able to go online, open up a YouTube channel, and see how the best bricklayers make brick. I literally had some stucco that was damaged in my backyard, and I had to go fix it. And the guy it was like a very small patch. And the person who came in and gave me an offer, it was something like $2,500. Absolutely crazy. It's like a bag of stuccos, like $60 at the store or something. Now, his skill is important for sure, right? But he was really quoting me that huge number because he didn't want to do the job. And it was just an astronomically high number. And I did a lot of research that showed that he was just overcharging because he didn't want to do the work. And I'm assuming there's no reason that should have been anywhere near that cost, because it's like, a 20-minute job if you know what you're doing. So I just did it myself, and I logged online and I put in Claude and, typed in, what do I need to do? And it gave me everything. So
again, we're in this world where things are becoming more automated. They're becoming more streamlined with AI. The value of the degree itself is diminishing, apparently. So why focus on education? Why should we compel young people to, at the very least, do well in intermediary right? In middle school, high school, why should they focus on school at that age if going to college most likely is not going to do much for them?
I don't necessarily know if I agree with that. I think going to school at a young age builds habits. It's like taking a math class changes how you think about problems. There's a lot of evidence that shows if you're in math and you solve math problems, your brain functions differently when you stop practicing math, right? So I think younger education is critical to the success of everybody. I think that you need to take electronics, as much of them as you can, out of school. And I think that social media is damaging. We are seeing a lot of countries that are completely, banning it until I think it's 16 in some countries, like Australia. I think that's very healthy. But you need people to focus on school. Now, once they get done with high school, I don't necessarily know if they need any school past that. It depends on what they want to do.
I think I agree with that. I think kids and parents, it's incredibly important for you to be involved in your kids' education and in their journey, right? They're learning from 5 to 18, their brains are the most malleable, right? They're able to take in and synthesize the most information the fastest. They're able to build bridges and learn new concepts at that age. So whatever they're learning, and they will be learning something, no matter what they're doing out in the world. If they're playing hooky and they're doing stuff behind the local grocery store, whatever they're doing, they're spending their time doing, they're learning something. So it's imperative that as parents, I think, we make sure that we know what our kids are learning, that it aligns with the values that we're trying to instill in them, but that it's also preparing them for this tough world. And I think the job of primary school, right, is to arm young minds with the skill sets and the tools necessary to navigate adult life. And college fits into that for some people. Yeah, but so if you don't go to college and you go into the trades, so be it. That's fine. Either way, middle school and high school should be a time when you're being prepared with the skills, communication skills, learning and rapid learning and studying, the ability to take in information and learn and retain that information, the ability to follow directions, the ability to take orders, the ability, which requires a lot of discipline, because sometimes you're taking orders from somebody you don't respect. Right? You don't have to respect your boss.
No.
But you got to listen to them. They're the boss.
And you have to get along with them. They're your boss. Like my son was actually working at Rayleigh's, and he had a manager that he hated, and it just wasn't working between him. And I took him aside, and I was like, you have to get along with this guy. Because he's either you get along with him and you don't like work, but things are being successful, or you really don't get along with him and everybody is miserable.
Well, we live in a society where hierarchy is a bad word, right? But there is a hierarchy in the real world. There's a hierarchy in any workplace. You don't get to pick who your boss is, and you don't get to pick if they had a bad day or their wife left them last night or whatever, right? You only get to control your actions and your reactions, how you react to other people. And you learn that in high school.
You do you? See, that's my biggest thing.
You should.
Look, I am so fed up with the victim mentality in America, where you blame other people for your bad behavior. I tell my kids this all the time. The only person that can control you is you. If everybody else in the room is being a bigoted a-hole, or everybody else in the room is being a crybaby, or if everybody else in the room wants to pick a fight, or if everybody else in the room is causing you bad names or gossiping, you can either participate in it or you can abstain from it. And how you respond is the only thing that you can actually control. And the people who can control their own emotions and themselves and how they respond to things are typically the people that are far more successful than everybody else.
High school especially tends to be a kind of contrived world. It's kind of a fake bubble, right? The consequences generally for your actions are not that severe because you're a minor. You're a minor in a controlled system, and the system generally tends to take some responsibility for your actions. Some of it gets put on your shoulders, but you're not getting beat within an inch of your life. You're not losing your job. You're not losing your ability to pay to support a family. You're not nothing is that serious in high school. It may feel that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes there are social consequences that could be fairly severe. But it's high school's like the definition of first world problems, whether it feels like that or not. But it's imperative for parents to be involved in what those kids are learning. Again, in and out of the classroom. And if the classroom is not doing your kid a favor, then you need to make sure that they're getting other learning opportunities. They're engaged in other ways.
So let's talk about that a little bit, right? I have a real problem with a lot of the topics. And you said earlier something that really kind of triggers the wrong word, but, light bulb moment almost. I don't agree with sending my kids to school where the teachers are teaching their ideology or their philosophy of life to kids. That's not their job.
It's not at all their job, but it has become par for the course, right? And unfortunately, there are a lot of things in life that make us uncomfortable that we don't like, and that, for better or worse, for one reason or another, we end up having to suck up and deal with, right? And that's kind of real life as well.
Sure.
So in that way, especially if your kid is being inundated with ideas that don't jive with how you and your family see the world and how you're trying to raise this young person, then it's all the more important that you do what you can to counter that and to allow them to be able to see the world and see both sides. At the very least, be able to make up their own mind, because they are able and willing to look at both sides of any coin, rather than just accepting rote what somebody is telling them to think or believe. But that's part of the learning process.
For sure. Like you have to have people that you disagree with, otherwise you don't learn, right? And it's okay to be uncomfortable, because you learn the most when you are uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. That being said, I still think that there should be guidance for schools along on two fronts, two axes, right? Is number one, you're there to teach the kids the subject that you're there to teach the kids. If you're a math teacher, you should be focusing on making sure that the kids teach math. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think that teachers aren't role models and they shouldn't be helping kids navigate life and make good decisions. For sure. There's definitely some of that, and I don't want to discourage that at all. But there is a boundary between going out of your way to become an ideologue versus helping kids navigate the general problems of growing up, number one. And number two, the other side of that is I think we are smashing too many things, again, back to the earlier conversation, into a small time period. Yeah. And it's not about not teaching these other topics, right? It's more about making sure that you have you said it earlier, the right tools in the toolbox to be successful at life. And a lot of times it's the repetition of those skills that make you good at those skills. Mm-hmm. So if you have so many things where I'm touching one thing for, half a week, and then I switch to a different topic for another half of a week, and by the end of the year, you'd had no repetition on the most important critical things, back to discipline. Discipline is earned over time. Mm-hmm. It's not that practice makes perfect. It's that perfect practice makes perfect. But you have to practice to get it right so that you become perfect at something. So if kids aren't practicing homework, and they're not practicing turning it in on time, and they're not practicing following a schedule, and they're not practicing all the other things that make them being uncomfortable, then they're not learning the things that they need to learn. They're not putting the tools in their toolbox to be successful.
And
in
most
life.
Importantly, they have a mindset and a mentality that is not going to do well for them. It's not going to do them any favors as an adult.
That's right. Yeah.
That brings up parent choice and school choice, right? That's something that's kind of a hot button topic in the U.S. because on the one hand, the more we exercise and develop the charter school system, which does inarguably, without a doubt, give parents more options.
Yeah.
But the charter and the private school systems, which both outperform public schools handily in every state and demonstrably in most of them, I meant to say emphatically. It's always demonstrable, but emphatically, like it's a pretty stark difference in most states.
Yeah.
But when we funnel kids into those areas, what happens to the public schools? Will they lose funding?
Yeah, so here's a question. The funding question is super interesting to me, because if you do the math, I think it's something like K through 12, we pay schools, I think it's like on average $15,000 to $17,000 per student.
We're close to 18,000 nationally, but there's a major difference between the lowest states that are hovering around like 11,000 up to like what New York was, what, 34, something like that.
Wow.
So it's a
I
big,
mean, there's
big
cost of living
disparity.
differences for sure.
Sure, but big disparity and not a whole lot of difference in outcomes. Broadly speaking, across the board, public schools are just still doing miserable compared
Yeah,
to.
so that's the part that's super weird to me, right? Is because my son we pulled him out of school because it just wasn't working for him. My older two sons went through public education just fine. They had some hiccups for sure, but my youngest son, he's very sensitive, and he was getting picked on relentlessly to the point where he was crying every day when we'd show up at school, and he just didn't want to go to school. So we finally made the decision to pull him out of that school and to send him to charter school. And that wasn't a financial decision. It wasn't an educational system. It was it just isn't working for him. Now, we told him that he was going to come home for 2 years. So he's 1 year in, 2 years, 1 year to go. And then we were going to send him back to high school because I believe that socialization in high school is important. But I want him to focus on the things that are important for him to learn at this stage in his life. And so we pulled him at home. It's $8,000 for me to pay for his charter education at home. And that has teachers that teach him every single day. He's got all the core classes, which are reading, writing, math, science, history.
Yeah.
It's only the core classes. It's all online. So he talks to his teachers online. He video conferences with his teachers online, and he takes all the online classes. And the kid is knocking it out of the park. He's got straight A's. Now, a lot of that is parenting at home, making sure that he's taking his classes, and I don't turn on TV, and video games are completely turned off until he's got all of his stuff done for the day. So he's got incentive to do it. And when he's got straight A's, he can play as many video games as he wants. As far as I'm concerned, he can, I say till your eyes bleed. But the fact that I'm paying $8,000 for what I consider, compared to the public school system here in our town, infinitely better. The teachers are better. The materials better.
What do you tell parents who can't afford that? Not everybody. First of all, not every kid has two parents.
Sure.
Some lot of kids, especially inner city kids, have got a struggling single parent, probably multiple kids and multiple jobs. Not a lot of time to be watching their kids, unfortunately. So what advice would you give them in how to still be involved in their kids' education?
I mean, I would say the same thing about my other two kids, and I'm sure you could say this about yours, is just pay attention. I mean, at the end of the day, you might be, look, I work a lot of hours. I'm one of those guys where I'm just very obsessed about work just because it's what I love to do. And so I will put in 60, 80, 100 hours in a week on my job just because that's me. Mm-hmm. But when my son comes in that door and he wants me to pay attention to something, I don't tell him to go away because I'm tired. Mm-hmm. I am tired. I'm exhausted. My brain just wants to turn off. I just want to yell. I just want to be frustrated. I just want to go sit down and watch TV. There's a million things that I want to do that's not deal with my kids at that point in time.
Sure.
But I tell myself every single day, I have 18 years until he is out of the house. That's it, just 18. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not there, present, regardless of, how I feel, I better be showing up for my kids. And if they want to show me a picture, if they want to show me their project, if they want to show me what they're doing in school that they're interested in, I will always look at it. I will always be excited. I will always be interested. And you know what? Psychologically, I may not be on any of those days. I may be just like I just don't even want to go upstairs and see it, or I don't even want to open my eyes and pay attention to, like, he's handing me the painting that he did. I'm just like, oh yeah, great. It's a finger painting of 10 different. Does it even look like an octopus? He says it's an octopus. Yeah. I think the key for any parent is to just be present. Yeah. Pay attention to your kids, even when you don't want to.
Your kids are your most important job.
Yes, I agree with that.
And they are your future. And they're the future of our country.
Well, it's not just that. It's man. there's a guy named Patrick Bet David who is telling a story about a guy that he knows and how he was an old guy and his son didn't want to spend any time with him, and he recognized that it was all his fault, that he just had never spent time with his son. Yeah. And now that he was older, all he wanted to do was spend time with his son. But
he never built that bridge.
He never built that bridge. And to me, I will always build that bridge. I will always put my kids
And your kids
first.
will remember that.
Well, I'll take that back. I will always put my kids second. And
after wife.
Wife first. Yeah. Because when the kids leave, and this is, by the way, this is really good advice for anybody listening. When your kids leave the house, it's still you and your wife. Yeah. So if you take those 18 years where you have kids, or
your husband.
Or your husband, yeah. If you take those 18 years and you're not paying attention to your spouse, then when your kids leave, you will get a divorce and your life will be miserable. Or, I mean, maybe it might get better. There's relative considerations there. But for me, my relationship with my wife is the number one thing because I can't put the kids in front of her, and I never will.
But they're a very close second.
Yeah,
and they're before
absolutely.
Anything else. They're definitely above. They're before you.
Yeah,
is the point. When I say put the kids first, I don't mean put them before your spouse, their other parent, but I mean put them before you.
Happy spouse, happy house. Not happy wife, happy life. Happy spouse, happy house. Both people have to be happy.
Yeah, and statistically speaking, if the parents are more happy, the kids are much more likely to be happy. They're much more likely to have a centered, grounded outlook on life, and they're going to be much more well adapted versus maladapted. They're going to be able to roll with the punches in life. It's like problems are going to come to everybody. Everybody has problems, no matter what socioeconomic band you're part of, or part of the stratus, the socioeconomic stratus, no matter what level that you're at, problems in life will come your way. But how well you are able to deal with those issues, a huge amount of that comes from how good or bad your childhood was. And that is in large part up to your parents. So you parents, you have a responsibility to put your kids before you in terms of your comfort, right? In terms of what you want to do, your hobbies, the things that are extemporary, right? Obviously, you've got to make a living. Obviously, you need to provide, but your kids need you. And I think going back to especially parents with low incomes, life happens. Life is expensive. It's hard. And I think it's back to a conversation we had about the economy several episodes ago. I think it is becoming markedly harder for upward mobility to get its start for a lot of young families.
Yeah.
It's not that America still has the greatest upward mobility on the planet, but it is starting to feel like that initial upward slope for a lot of people, the starting point is getting more and more slippery. And so regardless of where you are economically, the best things you can do are graduate high school, having paid attention, so you learned and you had the basic preparation and life skills for life, college or not. Graduate high school, get married, have kids, wait to have kids until you're married, people, right? Have skin in the game, in other words. And then
that's a whole nother podcast episode.
And get a job and do work. It doesn't matter what it is. Find work and just stick to it. Get good at it.
Yeah, so I think that kind of segues back to taking care of your kids and is pivotal for their success in school. And we have seen a decline in the household in terms of families in America, and I think that has had a negative impact on school. I think policy has had a negative impact on school. And by the way, this isn't making or pointing fingers at teachers to say people are bad teachers. I think most of that are policy decisions, not teachers' decisions. And a lot of teachers have to live with the policy, whether they agree with it or not.
So that brings us to the next question. Now that we've kind of pointed the finger at parents for a little bit, what can we do from a policy standpoint? What can we do as voters, as taxpayers, as people who are supporting that system, whether we like it or not? A system that arguably is not doing our kids enough favors in life. What can we do to encourage better policy, and what would that policy look like?
Look, I think less is more, and demanding that we focus on the rigors of schooling is important. So I think slightly more rigorous rules in terms of making sure that there's less truancy and people have to follow the instructions of the school. I think we've taken a lot of power away from schools to punish kids that are misbehaving. I think that's a bad thing. The other thing is we have to really pull back a lot of the extra stuff that we're trying to slam into the curriculum. So if you see a policy that's on a voting block that says add these 10 things to school, say no. Like, we want to focus on the things that are the most critical skills. And if the people, look, all those other skills are important for sure, but if they're missing the critical skills, none of those other skills matter.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that we are hyper focusing on the right sets of skills. And that just means refiguring what a classical school day looks like. And I think you made another point earlier is we keep dropping the number of school days lower and lower and lower. Now, I mean, don't get me wrong. There was a time where a lot of people didn't go to school, and we had a whole huge ramp up of the number of days that people were in school.
Well, in the late 1800s, I think it was like 240 or so was the average American
School day?
year.
Really?
Year, 240 days to 250. Much like the
Wow.
leading countries in Asia today, who, ironically enough, whose education systems currently are built on our older model. Side note.
Side note.
So, but back to the policy thing. So what you're saying is, from a policy standpoint, we should be focusing more on hammering in the basics, which would be arithmetic, reading and writing, which is communication skills. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And building discipline. So
Well, yeah.
homework would be a part of that, probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
More
That
Because I'm
drives me
seeing
nuts.
kids get less and less homework. Even in the charter schools, they're getting less and less homework. I don't know if this is my brain just being hyperbolic or not, but
Totally. Hyperbolic. I don't
I
even know
feel
what
like
that means.
I had like 3 to 4 hours of homework a night.
Yeah, I had a ton of homework all the
Right.
time.
Kids are not doing that, and I think it's not building the reps in that you mentioned. It's not building the discipline, and it's also creating an issue where kids have more free time to get into trouble
Yeah, well, I mean, that there's a whole different.
and spend more time on social media.
Yeah,
That's what I mean by get into trouble.
I think the social media is the worst part because I'm not seeing them outside playing as much as they used to. But
Not at all.
you know, I think us not we see a huge drop in kids when they get into college for their schooling. My kids all experienced it, and that was specifically because they weren't ready for all the skills that high school requires you to be successful and college requires you to be successful. So we're seeing a lot of drop-off rates for people's success in high school, and I think a lot of that is actually because we're not having them do homework in elementary school and middle school. And so by the time they hit their freshman year in high school, they hit a wall.
Yeah.
And that wall is really kind of painful. So I think it's making sure that we have consistency through all the grades, and we need a plan, a clear plan. And I think the plans that we currently have to loosen everything up are just a bad idea.
Now, a lot of teachers might tell you, well, I would love to focus more on the hard skills. I would love to focus more on getting through the syllabus, but I've got all these disciplinary issues, right? I've got all these disrespectful young people who are not listening. They're being disruptive to their peers, or they're just truant. They're just not showing up. Truancy is at an all-time high, at least in our state,
Yeah.
and in a lot of other states.
Again, that's a policy thing, though.
Is it?
I think so. I think if you...
Because charter schools, for those that don't know, one of the major differences between a charter and a public school is charter schools have the right to kick your kids out
Yeah.
for behavior stuff. They just won't put up with it. And now the public school people who are pro public school will say, well, yeah, but then that just means those kids with problems are now getting kicked back to the public school, and now they're concentrating there. We're having all these problem kids because the charters won't take them, won't keep them. How do you address that? Are we supposed to just kick those kids out of the public schools?
I think we used to, if you go look at it. Like, if people were truant for so many times... Look, I really think if people are not good at school and they can't pay attention, sometimes the hard lessons in life are the best. I don't know if the numbers support that, and I don't really want to suggest that as a choice unless I actually have the statistical data to back it up. Because, you know, hindsight's 2020. We think things were better in the past when they're actually better now, and we got to be really careful about playing that numbers game. I know that things had gotten better until, the 80s and the 90s, and then we started seeing drop-off rates in things like math. So I don't know really what that cause and effect tree looked like, and I don't know in terms of whether that's, if you look at when truancy started kind of spiking in the last 10 years specifically, look, a lot of things have happened over COVID. The current population, and I'll use my two oldest sons as an example, are definitely scarred by COVID. So I have to kind of put that into the public zeitgeist of the possible impacts of these things, and that's fine. But I don't know. I think there's definitely some research that should be done in that area to understand it better.
I think it's going to be a much bigger issue tackling things from a policy level at the states, right, and at a federal level. I think it's going to be easier in the meantime for parents to just get more involved with their kids.
Yeah, I think that's the most
get more
important
involved with your kids' schooling. Ask them about their day. Ask them to teach you something. What did you learn today? Okay, now teach me. Right?
Yeah.
If you learned it, you should be able to teach it. And the more you teach it, the better you learn it. Right?
Yeah.
So, okay, you didn't learn it that well? Well, keep teaching me. Let's go through this together. Take that extra 20 minutes at the end of the day that you really want to be doing something else with, and just give it to them. Right?
Well,
it doesn't take a lot necessarily.
Look, I look at it this way.
And go to parent-teacher conferences.
Yeah.
Meet your kids. I know a lot of educators and school administrators, and I'm blown away at how many times they tell me, this kid, I never once met their parents until the very end of the school year, and then suddenly the parents coming in all angry and demanding that I give their kid some chance to make up credits or whatever because they're failing, right? Tons. I hear that all the time. I heard that at the legislature a bunch. I hear it from parents that have they go to the PTA meetings, they're involved in school activities, and so-and-so's kid, they've never met so-and-so. They don't even know what that person's mom or dad looks like.
Yeah, I think the number one lesson from this conversation is we need to focus on policies that focus more on the basics, and also parenting and just paying attention to your kids are a part of those basics. So I just want to say, teachers, I support you, and thank you for the amazing jobs that you do. Administrators, I know it's not easy. Thank you for the amazing jobs that you do. Legislators, I know you're trying. I'm not saying that you're doing a bad job. I'm just saying that we can do better, and that there are challenges that we have within our systems, and all of us need to care as a society and as parents to make things better. And to do that, we have to honestly acknowledge the problems.
Yeah, I'm not going to give a bye to you legislators. I don't think it matters. It's not about the dollars that we spend. It's about how we spend them.
I agree with that 100%.
That's how we need to do that from a policy perspective. We need to have more conversations about how to more effectively spend those dollars rather than just focusing on how do I get more dollars into the school. Parenting is critical. Love your kids. Be there for your kids. Teach them. If their school's failing them, you can't, right? They can't have both. Fail them. You've got to be there. And the school's job, those teachers' job, is not to raise your kids. You need to raise your kids. You need to teach your kids manners and how to respect other people and how to get along with other people. And I'm going to get off my soapbox, but teachers, we appreciate you. Educators broadly, everybody involved in that sphere, we do appreciate you. That is public service, much in the same vein as law enforcement, EMS, right? You guys are doing a service for the greater good of our society. And we want to encourage you guys in that, and we want to arm you any way possible, and just encourage you in doing your job and doing a better job for our young ones. And now I'm off my soapbox.
Now you're on your soapbox. Okay. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for joining today's episode, and have a great weekend.